Half of the nation and really most of the media is still trying to get their heads around the election of 2016. But enough about President-elect Donald Trump. Let's talk about Delaware, and joining us to do that is Steve Tanzer, who writes with DelawareLiberal.net. Thanks for being here, Steve.
My pleasure.
So let's start with the biggest upset of election night in Delaware, because things pretty much went as expected, except for Senate President Pro-tem Patty Blevins, who lost to Anthony Del Collo, a Republican. Really, that was the big story of the night here in Delaware as far as surprises.
It was the only surprise. I mean, there were no other surprises in the election results at all. Very interesting race. The Republicans had put up a slate of like four young challengers to incumbents, and this was probably the one I would have least expected to flip. What happened is I found out, just checking around after the election, was this was a very intense election. It was very much of an in-your-face election. Anthony Del Collo, for example, would put up signs next to Patty Blevins, a sign saying "career politician" with an arrow pointing to the sign. Right. Very doctrinaire election as well. It was all about change, without really being all that specific. Now, Del Collo is more of quite a conservative in the sense he's a strong Second Amendment guy, very bright guy, an attorney, and it'll be interesting to see how he fares down there, because you can run that change mantra once, but we'll see what happens from here on in. Right. But clearly, that has thrown the entire Senate into disarray in the sense that there's a legitimate question as to whether the Democrats will even control the Senate come next March. This coming March, there will be a special election to replace Bethany Hall Long, who is now the Lieutenant Governor-elect.
Which you pointed out, I think, the last time you were here, that there would be that if she were to win, and she did.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that all of the momentum's with the Republicans. They won that race. The Democrats will be defending a seat. Democrats are looking at three prospective candidates, none of whom jump out at you as being unbeatable in any sense of the word. You've got State Representative Quinn Johnson, you've got State Representative Earl Jakes, and you have the current Clerk of the Peace, Ken Bolden, who, to my knowledge, has never had a public utterance on a policy at all. He's a really likable guy, sure, but is not someone who really has been in the public policy area of government. So that's what's going to happen. Bethany Hall Long can stay in the Senate even into the beginning of this new legislative session, because the Lieutenant Governor and Governor are actually inaugurated after the General Assembly has already been sworn in. So she'll leave her post once she's sworn in, and I suspect that Governor Carney at that time will announce a special election that'll take place sometime during the 6-week break for the Joint Finance Committee hearings, end of January through the middle of March.
All right, well, let's hear from the Republicans. We have a clip from Charlie Copeland that our producer Andrea Gibbs got on election night at their headquarters at the Grotto's Pizza in Dover. Let's take a listen to Charlie Copeland.
We ran 4 state Senate millennial candidates whose average age was only a year larger than the average tenure of the Democrat they ran against. And one of those millennial candidates beat the pro-tem in the state Senate, a long-serving, powerful Democrat, and Anthony Del Collo beat her. And now the state Senate is 11-10.
So kind of to your point that it really is up in the air where the Senate goes, and it's been a long time since Republicans have been in a majority in either House or Senate.
Well, not so much the House. The House really only went Democratic back in, I believe it was 2010.
Okay.
However, the Senate, I worked in the Senate for 20 years,
right,
and it was Democratic the whole time.
Right.
Now, one of the main reasons why the body is now at risk or in question is because when I was in the Senate, there were times when most of the time, there were 4 senators from Sussex County, all of whom were Democrats.
Right.
There are 4 senators from Sussex County now, all of whom are Republicans. And I mean, if you take a look at the results in the county, other than the area east of Route 1, I mean, it's solid Republican territory. Sussex County went for Donald Trump by 23,000 votes, for example, in this last presidential election. So it is true. The Democrats, I believe, have also missed an opportunity. They really have not done the proper candidate recruitment recently. I had said on the blog that this year alone there was one seat in particular. It was political malpractice, not to challenge. And that was Dave Lawson. He's a senator from westernmost Kent County, which is a conservative area. However, 4 years ago, he almost lost to a neophyte, a newcomer who came within like 1.5% of beating him. And this year, the Democrats chose not to even run anybody against him. That's political malpractice, and you reap what you sow.
So do you see, it's sometimes hard to see Republicans, especially statewide, making inroads in such a Democratic state, but is this sort of tortoise versus the hare kind of theory and practice that Copeland is running for the party to kind of pick up seat here and seat there, having an impact on the makeup of the General Assembly, that the Republicans, because of the Southern growth of the Republican Party, making an impact and going to swing things in the next several years? Do you think?
Clearly the Senate is and will continue to be at risk. Although I found his remarks a little ironic, because if you take a look at people, for example, like Colin Bonini, Greg Lavelle, who am I forgetting? Gerald Hocker, several others. These are people who have been in the General Assembly for a long, long time. It's not as if one party is suffused with all this young blood and another party is basically running geriatric patients. Although you're going to see a huge swing in the Democrats in the next few years, because I fully expect Senator Bob Marshall will not run for re-election. I don't think that Margaret Rose Henry is going to run for re-election. Those are not seats that are really necessarily in play for the Republicans.
Right.
But you will get at least some younger people in those particular positions.
We'll be watching. Steve, thanks so much for your insight. We really appreciate it. Steve Tanzer, DelawareLiberal.net. His blog is dedicated to this conversation right now, so check it out. Steve, thanks again for being here.